Welcome to the Walk This House podcast, your ultimate journey for all things real estate. Where top industry professionals share their insight and knowledge about purchasing, selling, or maintaining your biggest investment, all under one roof. More than just a podcast, Walk This House is your comprehensive library/database of information aimed at informing, educating, and inspiring better home health.
Welcome to Walk This House. I'm here today with Cathy Clamp, and I'll be your host. My name is Mark Pollard. Welcome today, Cathy.
Thank you, Mark. I'm very excited to be here.
I appreciate you coming in and talking to us.
Yeah, I'm excited about us talking about home inspections, pre-home inspections, because I think it's a great idea for a lot of sellers out there, and they're sometimes a little intimidated by them.
I totally agree, and I think it's something that's been overlooked in the industry for years, and hopefully we can change that.
Yeah.
So before we get into that a little bit, tell us a little. I did a little research. I found out a little bit about you from your bio online.
Oh, okay.
But I found out that you came from the East Coast out to the West Coast.
That is right.
And was it New Hampshire University?
It was, yes. Okay. University of New Hampshire. That's right.
So tell us a little bit about your journey out to the West Coast.
It was not expected.
Oh.
The plan was to always go back to New Hampshire. And the reason I ended up in San Diego is my dad was like, you have to go to the San Diego Zoo. He's like, it's an amazing zoo. You got to go. So I made it out to San Diego, coming cross country in my Delta 88. I'm sure people had to look that up.
88.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one I haven't heard of.
It's a big car. It was a lot of fun. And I made it out here, and I said, that's it. I'm not going back. And
Really?
I just planted roots. And it was a year. I lived here a year before I got to the zoo. But I did finally get to the zoo, and I do recommend it. Yes. And then, I got married. I had kids. And after I had kids, I decided, what am I going to do? How can I have a career and make some money and still be home with the kids? And I went into real estate. I don't really think kids in real estate work well together, but everybody does it. So my kids got used to it, and then that was back in 2005. And ever since then, I've loved it, and it's been great. And I think my kids are actually happy today that I'm in real estate. And then in 2020, I went out on my own, and I started my own brokerage, Cathy Clamp Real Estate.
Cathy Clamp Realty.
Yeah, exactly. And so here we are today, still thriving in real estate. And I love working with buyers and sellers and helping them transition into their next event of their life.
That's awesome. We met, I think, right before you transitioned to your own brokerage.
Yes, that's right.
And because we both are in IB there, and I remember meeting you for the first time and giving you a card, and we thought, well, maybe we'll do some business. So, and here we are 3 years later.
And here we are. Yes.
So you never know.
I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. In the real estate world, what you said you got into the real estate industry, but what made you want to get into it? Was there anyone in your family that did it? Were you just did somebody mention it and you're like, oh, that'd be a good idea? What made you jump into real estate?
Okay, you want the truth? I was in Lamaze.
Yeah.
And this woman next to me, who is also in Lamaze, was like, hey, you should be a realtor. And I'm like, I don't think so. But at the time, I was already in sales. I had been doing sales for a good amount of time for other marketing companies.
Okay.
And so she was like, no, come work for me. You don't even have to get your real estate license. Just come work with me. But then once I did have to get my real estate license. And so that's what it kind of just started off. It was just, that was back in 2004. And she was like, hey, you can stay home with your kids. We can be flexible with your timing. You'll really like it. And she was right. So I had a mentor, Nancy Parrott, who helped me out. And that was back when in Coronado there was a brokerage called Lee Mather. company realtors, and Lee Mather started the brokerage, and it was really great. And so I still chit chat with a number of the agents that we all started out together with. And so it began in that way, mostly so I could have flexibility to be with my kids, and also to provide me with, a way to grow, to learn a new profession. The best thing about real estate is you get to do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that's for sure.
You're there from the beginning. You do a little counseling. You do a lot of cleaning. You work with contracts. You're negotiating. It's endless. And the great thing is each seller is different, so you have this diversity in your business as well. There's a lot of steps that are repeated, but that gives you the experience you need to modify them for the individual you're working with.
Yeah.
So and that was it. I mean, it was because that lady was in my Lamaze class. I don't know what I'd be doing otherwise. Yeah.
What a great story.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you we've worked together 3 years, and we've done buyer's inspections together. We've done sellers. And every time I do an inspection, your clients just seem happy. They seem informed, and they really seem to be enjoying the process. So,
And that's the whole key right there.
yeah.
There's a lot of conversation that happens in the beginning so that we can take away the uncertainties and the fears that happen when somebody who's never bought a house before, or hasn't sold their parents' house before, or they haven't gotten a loan before. It's those initial conversations that we can have with them that sets them up for success, and they're usually happier through the whole process.
That's fantastic, because what I've learned, especially from my construction background, anything to do with people's houses is an emotional process.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I know the last two that we worked on, there was the owners had lived in 40 to 50 plus years on both of those.
She said over 60
Over
years.
60 years. So that's a big transition in someone's life to move out of their home that they've been in for 60 years. So congrats on making that process so workable and walking those people through that.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. And the thing about it is there's a lot of work that goes into it before that house is actually on the market. Before everybody else gets to see it on the MLS.
Yeah.
So whether that's helping them with an estate planner, with an estate planner for sure, because sometimes they haven't talked to an attorney. And that's important for people to have a conversation with an attorney if they haven't done that before, especially when they're selling mom and dad's house, to make sure that they're protecting themselves and getting the best maybe tax benefits that they could possibly get. It's also putting them in touch with an estate salesperson. So, because a lot of times people they don't want to get rid of mom and dad's stuff, but if they feel like it's going to another house, or that they have done their best to try to get it sold and a little money back, it makes them feel better. So that's another option. And then, oh my gosh, there's the haulers and the cleaners, and honestly, a lot of my listings, there's 2 to 3 months of work prior to us actually getting them on the market. So, and part of that process usually is by the time we have gotten the house cleaned out, I usually have the conversation before we get the house cleaned out, but I'm like, hey, I recommend you get a home inspection, because they haven't lived in the house, or even if they have lived in the house, they don't even know. They've been overwhelmed by so many other decisions that they've been making along the process.
Yeah.
This helps them to be able to see and feel and hear and have an expert on the other side let them know, like, okay, here is pretty much your final product that you're going to be putting out on the market. How do you feel about it? What do you know about it? And it puts them in the driver's seat before we actually hit that MLS active.
That's awesome. That is really awesome. And I think that, like you say, that's key. And for my part, just to come in and inspect the home and know where you stand there is a big part of it. But you've just gone over everything so beautifully and what should happen before.
Right.
I think when the market's hot, it seems like houses are just listed, they're sold within 3 days, and a lot of that process doesn't happen. And maybe it doesn't need to happen, but I don't know what you're feeling on that. Should it still happen when the market's hot?
Every seller has a different goal,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes a seller wants a quick, easy, fast sale. Sometimes a seller wants, whether it's right or wrong, they want to find the perfect buyer for their home. Sometimes a seller has to sell their home but really doesn't want to sell their home. So you really have to find out what is their end goal, right? And then you can figure out the plan that's going to get them across the finish line. But if you want to sell your house for the most money you could possibly sell it for, you need to clean it out. It needs to be completely clutter-free. It needs to be clean and painted and pretty and the best you can make it look so that you can get the most money for it, if that's your goal, right?
Yeah.
I have some sellers that are like, no, I'm not moving out. No, I'm not cleaning anything up. I don't want to throw anything away. Whatever I have here is what they're buying, right? And
Really?
so, yeah, so then you're like, okay, well, we're going down the investor path, and they won't be giving you top dollar.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't care. Will they release some money to me before the close of escrow? Will they let me stay in the house until this date? Will they clear the house out so I don't have to deal with the 30 years of mom and dad stuff?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it just depends on how people want to move forward with the sale of their home. But traditionally, more often than not, they do want to put their best foot forward.
Yeah, and get the most money.
Yeah, and get the most money.
But I see that a lot when I'll do inspections, and I'll see homes that are older, but they could have gone through and done some spend a few $1,000s, and,
for sure.
and I think it would have increased the value substantially. So
I had a homeowner, they spent 6 months getting their house ready. They called me up. They said, what do we need to do? And I was like, you have to get a new roof. You need to get a termite inspection. You need to paint. You need to get rid of all this stuff. And 6 months later, they did all of that, and they sold their house for a lot of money.
really,
It was the highest sale in our neighborhood. And so a lot of other people were like, hey, I can get that too. I'm like, well, do you want to put 6 months worth of work and probably $50,000-$60,000 into your house to make that happen? Not everybody has that threshold of pain, but some people do, and it's rewarding.
yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Well, let's jump into
Okay.
our subject here, pre-listing home inspections. And
Yeah.
like we were just talking a little bit before we started, I believe when I got into inspections, it's an area that kind of gets overlooked, and agents kind of have their different reasons why they don't. Mostly I hear that the buyers are going to do their own inspection. So why have a home inspection done before, when we're just going to find out what's happening during that? So I wanted to see if there was any statistics out there, and I found a few that might be interesting to some of our listeners. But I found an article published by Bankrate, and it listed the 6 reasons why a real estate deal might fall through. And out of the 6, can you guess what the top one was?
Home inspection?
No.
Oh, okay. Financing?
It's a trick question.
Financing?
Financing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
financing. Yeah.
Yeah, financing, which makes sense because
Sure.
it's all about the money.
Yeah.
The second one was contingencies not met.
Okay.
The third one was the home inspection issues.
Okay, sure.
So number 3 on the list was from their quote, contracts often include inspection-related contingencies that allow a buyer to walk away from a deal if significant or expensive issues are uncovered during the buyer's home inspection,
Sure.
which we all know.
Right.
That makes sense to us, but I think that information may not. If someone's been in a home for 60 years, they're not thinking about a pre-listing inspection. They kind of feel like they know their home. They're pretty comfortable with the way it is. But when someone like you comes in and says, "Hey, we should do this and this and this, and we should get a home inspection," I think that opens their eyes to what they need to do and what they could maximize their potential for. So we don't leave anybody hanging. The last 3 were low appraisal, title issues, and cold feet. So
yeah.
those 3 kind of
Yep.
seem down
Okay,
the
those
road
are
a little
good. Yeah,
bit, but they are out there. So In 2023, there was just over 4 million homes sold in the U.S. 15 of those, 15% actually, fell out of contract. And that's equivalent, I did a little math, that's about just over 613,000 homes that fell out of contract in the U.S. last year. That's a lot of homes.
Sure.
If most of those are financing, I would think that most of them are financing. So that would leave, they said 25% out of that 613 that were from inspection issues. So that's approximately 150,000 homes that potentially could have had a pre-listing inspection, and I think that number would drop way, way down.
Okay. Statistics are not always your friend because 93% of them are made up on the spot.
Yes.
As I just did. When we do a deep dive into that, so when a home falls out of escrow because of an inspection issue, it's usually a material fact that affects the value of the property. And then what happens is the buyer says, hey, I think, you need a new roof. And I think that roof is worth, $15,000, right? And the seller says, no way. No, I can totally get that roof done for $7,000. Mm-hmm. And then they have an impasse on, maybe, let's just say in this example, there's an impasse. They can't figure out where the middle ground is. And so they say, forget it. I'm out. I'm not even going to deal with this, right?
Yeah.
So they cancel escrow. But more often than not, then they go back on the market. And now the seller is having to disclose the buyer's home inspection, right? Mm-hmm. So they're disclosing that, and they're like, "Hey, we need a new roof." And we had 2 estimates come in. The buyers had their estimate come in at $15,000, and I had my estimate come in, and it's at $7,000. Now they're in the driver's seat again, right? Mm-hmm. Like the seller's back in the driver's seat. If they had done the home inspection, the pre-home inspection, they could have been in the driver's seat the whole time, right?
Exactly.
They missed that opportunity.
Yeah.
And now their home is sat on the market longer. They've had a little bit more stress. They now have to go back into escrow and start the whole process over. And more often than not, they're going to be able to move forward because they know the material fact that is affecting the value of their property, and they can market it that way. Yeah. So now a buyer comes in and they're not afraid of what are the unknowns? Yeah. Right? Exactly. I forgot where we were going, but there was a point. Oh, the statistics. So, when houses fall out of escrow all the time, but usually when that house falls out, they will come back and go into escrow and will eventually sell. It just takes them longer. And I definitely think that if you do the home inspection, pre-home inspection, you can help reduce the amount of time you will be in escrow. And you can market your property in the best light that it can possibly be in. So, for example, we did a home inspection. This was the one in Chula Vista. So this was about a year or so ago. And my homeowner, it was her parents' house. And so she didn't live in it, and she was getting the home ready. And, there were some parts of the house that were dated. And she's like, what do you think we should do? So I'm always like, hey, you should get a home inspection, and we should stage this property, right? Staging's another thing. But so she said, okay, but if we do the home inspection, do I have to do any of the repair work? I'm like, no, that's totally up to you, but you'll know. And then maybe you can get some estimates ahead of time so you can know, like, hey, if I need to replace the breaker box, well, how much is that going to cost me? You can have your estimates up front, ready to go, ready to disclose, and that buyer can focus on items that they think are most important to them. And then when that buyer comes back with another estimate, you're like, hey, I've already done mine. This is what I'm willing to do. And they're a little bit more confident in their response. That particular seller took the opportunity to do all repair work that were health and safety issues. Mm-hmm. Updated smoke detectors, the water heater. I think there were a few other things that she did as well. But it took away her anxiety of not living in the house or not knowing. And when another good one is a termite inspection, to be honest with you. But when you do the general home inspection, if you're like, hey, I recommend, this is an old Zinco, box, get another opinion, bring in the specialty person, whether that's an electrician or a plumber or a roofer or a termite guy, whatever. You start to narrow that down for them so that they know exactly where they need to go and what other inspections or reports that they need. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I think the seller walks away getting more of their money back than all the inspections. Like whatever it costs for the home inspection, whether that's $500, $600, $700, they're going to get that money back in the end.
That was one of my questions for you, so thanks for answering that.
I'm just here to help.
Because I think it's a wise investment too. If you can get an inspection, you put $500 or $600 into it, and you'll get that money back four or fivefold at least.
In the state of California, the way our residential purchase contract is written, you are buying the property in the condition it is on the day that you purchase the property, right? So the seller technically does not need to do any repair work. You can do a home inspection and say, hey, the toilet doesn't work. And they can be like, well, it didn't work when you wrote the offer, so too bad, right?
Yeah.
But did they really know that? Maybe they didn't know that.
Yeah.
When you do the home inspection ahead of time and you share that with the buyer before they write their offer, they pretty much will have a very good idea of what the material value of the property is, right?
Yeah.
So you're not renegotiating on price. You're not renegotiating on a lot of other items because they've already determined the value of that property.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal because, if all of a sudden you have to put in a new sewer pipe for $15,000, or if the buyer might just be like, I just can't handle it. This is way too much work. I'm going to walk.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you rather they didn't actually even write an offer? Like, okay, if you're already scared, then I don't want to waste my time with
Exactly.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. It's gonna make that smoother. My experience has been, and I've heard agents tell me this, that whenever you're getting quotes for repairs during escrow, they're always higher.
Yeah.
Do you find that?
Well, sure.
Because there's that
mean,
rush factor.
Listen, I think you just want to hire a quality, reputable person who will do the work right for a fair amount of money, right? I like to think that that's always going to be the case, regardless of whoever your realtor is that you're working with, right? Mm-hmm. But with that said, I have definitely seen buyers who do a home inspection and then all of a sudden they go to, I don't know, there are these websites out there where you can like type in need a new roof, GFCIs, clogged drain, diverter valve not working, and then all of a sudden it spits out like this list of how much it would cost to do all these things, and some of them it's like $1,000 to replace a garbage disposal. Well, what brand did you get, and how long is it going to take you to replace that? I don't know.
Yeah.
But like all of a sudden, there can be a huge disparity on what the buyer thinks they should get a credit for and what the seller sees as reasonable.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely, I do see that quite a bit. I'd like to think that it really shouldn't happen.
Right.
Whoever's doing the job,
price.
It should be pretty close. It should be in the same ballpark, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yes, I've seen that.
That's a great point because I would run into that all the time during construction. Replace a garbage disposal. Well, you can go to Home Depot and get a Badger brand for $80, or you can get a $250 one. Right. And typically the installer might charge a little bit more for a nicer install. So,
yep.
Yeah. So, but if you're talking roof, then it can. I've had clients call me and say, you said I need a new roof. I got a quote for anywhere from $8,000 to $25,000, and
right.
I said, yeah, that's a huge difference, and it puts them in a bind. Like, where are we? And
not every seller has the resources to do repair work, right? Mm-hmm. Some sellers do. Like, if they do have the resources, they're like, great. You know what? I've got a friend who give me a good deal. He's a licensed, and I always tell my sellers, listen, you need to provide your invoices to people. So make sure you're not just hiring your brother-in-law, which they could, but I'm always like, hire a licensed, reputable person that when the buyer comes in, you're like, here, he just did my roof for me, and he's legit. He's licensed, he's insured, he's bonded, like all of this stuff. But if they could get it done for a much more reasonable rate, and if that's all done before the buyer moves in, that's great because buyers are spending, the average price is almost $1 million here in San Diego for a home, a single family home. Do you think they have another $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in their back pocket to put into a roof or to fix the plumbing or to upgrade the electrical? They probably don't.
Yeah. Yeah, they put everything into the
And
purchase.
maybe the seller doesn't either, but it's important that you know what these things are, and then you can price your home accordingly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happened with our latest one. We worked with a seller, and she's in her mid-90s, and she loves her home, right? Like, it was huge. It was a huge home, and she loved it, and there was nothing wrong with it in her mind, and she thought for sure I'm going to get more than $1 million because it was almost 3,000 square feet.
Is this the one on 8th?
And the one on 8th.
Okay.
Right?
I remember that.
But, we did the home inspection, and she was like, oh, maybe it's not worth $1 million. I mean, and some of it was cosmetic, for sure.
A lot of wood paneling.
A lot of wood paneling, a lot of tile throughout the place. But there were some other issues, some stairs that weren't exactly up to code, and the water heater was a little janky. There was just there were just some things, but that home inspection gave her the opportunity to step back and go, you know what, this home is priceless to me, but I'm actually putting a value on it for somebody else to buy.
Yeah.
What do I think that real value is?
Yeah.
And so she was able to reevaluate, and she got her other goal was to sell it quickly.
And how did it go?
She was
How did
able,
escrow go?
we were done in
Smooth.
we were done in 20 days.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was
That's
awesome.
great. Do you think pre-listing inspections help build trust between buyers and sellers?
No.
No?
I'll be honest with you.
They still are like, is that roof repair legit?
There are a number of flippers out there that will buy a home, fix it up, and then they have their home inspector come in and do a home inspection. And then so they'll say, well, we already gave you a home inspection. Well, I think it's still important that a buyer do a home inspection. And it isn't because we feel like the seller is doing something wrong or hiding anything, but you need to have that peace of mind yourself. So, for example, I had a buyer who bought a flip, and they had done a home inspection, and they gave it to us. And so he did his home inspection, and they missed a diverter valve in the bathroom. Like, you could turn the water on, but you couldn't get it to the shower head, right? Oh. It was just overlooked. It was overlooked by the previous home inspector. It was overlooked by I'm sure the team that checked off everything, right?
Yeah.
And so we were able to go back and say, hey, and good news, because after we closed escrow, they weren't going to come back and fix it, right?
Yeah.
So it's not always the big things. Sometimes it's the little things that matter. And I think just for peace of mind, not everybody will do that. Some buyers are very happy just to take the previous home inspection, walk the property. Everybody seems to have a brother, uncle, or aunt or sister who's in, real estate or construction. Yeah. And so sometimes they feel that they're like, we're good.
Yeah.
And the other thing is a lot of people get confused and they think that an appraiser is a home inspector.
I run into that, more than I think.
And I always have to educate them. No, they're not going to turn on the hot water heater. They're not going to turn on the stove. They're not going to run the dishwasher. They're not going to turn on, sometimes they do turn on the heater.
And
but it isn't always guaranteed. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. So I always tell them, I'm like, don't think, like if you're worried about something, don't think that appraiser is going to find it. They're not. You need your own home inspection. And the other thing about a home inspection is you get the whole report, the written report. It isn't like, oh, well, so-and-so came by and this is what, happened.
Yeah. Well, I think we've covered all of the good things. Let's talk about some of the cons now that could potentially come up during a pre-listing inspection. And one that I've heard is it's an additional expense. Mm-hmm. And again, I think we touched on that, but $500, $600, $700 even is a small amount to spend on a $1 million house. What do you think?
Well, I agree. But with that said, not every seller is in a position to spend that money,
Yeah.
right? When they're going through their list of priorities, if they're spending money on like, I got to get the lawn mowed and I got to pay for the cleaners to come
things
in.
can add up.
And you just asked me to pay for a stager and now you want me to paint this wall. And, it's just, it becomes where does that home inspection land on my priority list when I have a limited amount of resources?
Yeah.
And I can understand that, I still think that you get your money back, but it's hard when you're like, I just don't
When it's
even
upfront.
I just don't even have it.
Yeah.
I don't even have it.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll ask me, they're like, hey, Cathy, well, then you pay for it. And I'm like, that's not really, it's not my job. I don't own the house.
Yeah.
It's your responsibility to decide what you think the value of your house is and any material information that it could affect that value. Me, I do a visual inspection. I'll walk around. If I see a hole in the roof, I'm going to tell someone about it, right? But, I can't. It puts a lot of liability on me when I'm like, the seller could be like, I didn't want you to do it, and you did it. And now it's like, so they have to do it. The seller has to take the responsibility for it. And I do think in the long run, it's better for them. But I do get a lot of that. They're like, how much?
Yeah.
And what do I get for that? And do I have to be here the whole time? And how long is that going to take? I'm busy on Saturday. You're
Right.
like, okay,
Yeah.
But selling a house takes a lot of responsibility and time.
It does.
Yeah.
And I think your example about the folks that spent 6 months, I think that's great. People should come into the sale of a house prepared. It's a huge investment. It's a disruption of their lifestyle. And so you need to think it through and process that, hire a great agent. And it won't be a major emotional issue in your life.
That's right. You start to take away some of the emotional issues when all of a sudden it's a clean, healthy, happy home.
Yeah. Well, I think we just touched on you already touched on the buyer should get their own inspection.
Yeah.
And that was, I think that's important. And that's one of the objections that I get when I talk to agents about pre-listings. Like, well, we're just going to have the buyer we'll go off the buyer's inspection. The thing on the inspection side of things, if you can get 2 different inspectors to look at the same house, they're not always going to line up with the same things. They have different skill sets, they have different backgrounds, and that just gives you more assurances that of what the complete picture of that house is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Because people miss things.
Yeah.
Things. It's just we're human, right?
We are.
And the other thing is when you wait for the buyer to do the home inspection, when things are called out and they need more investigations and then that just prolongs the process. Even if you have a buyer and you've given that buyer 10 days to do their inspections, right? You've got 10 days to do everything. Well, but now they can't get the electrician in until day 12 or 13. I always tell my sellers, I'm like, you want that buyer to be happy at the end of the day. You want them to know as much as they possibly can know about the house, because when we close escrow, it's theirs. And you don't want them coming back to you 5 minutes after we close escrow, 5 days after, 5 months. We want them to be satisfied that they know what they're buying. Whether or not the seller does the repairs, the buyer knows, okay, an electrician needs to come in and we need to upgrade the panel and this is how much it's going to cost, right? They know it. But it can extend those contingency periods, which nobody really wants. We always say in real estate, time is of the essence.
Yeah.
And so that's another reason to get the pre-home inspection, because you can already have that lined up. Mm-hmm. Or the buyer can already know about it. Like, okay, I'm already going to have an electrician come out and look at this. Right?
I've had that actually happen.
Yeah.
I've had gone and done a buyer's inspection. We've seen a pre-inspection report. They knew that there was an issue with the electrical panel, so the electrician was there the same time I was doing my inspection.
Right.
Then you had 3 professionals verifying that there need to be an upgrade on the electrical. So, yeah, full disclosure.
Yeah.
So,
and then the seller can already factor in their mind.
yeah.
They're like,
Their expectations are set so that they know
Yeah.
what they're getting
maybe
into.
they increase their price by 20,000 knowing they're going to give a credit, or, you know, there's different marketing
Exactly.
opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. The other one is when you do a pre-inspection, I think we've covered that a little bit too, but you're going to have to make unavoidable repairs. If the roof is leaking, then, but you addressed that a little bit. It's an as-is sale. Are there major things that the buyer or the sellers can just say, no, I'm not going to fix it, don't have the funds, it's as is?
Yeah. That's absolutely it. I mean, I tell my buyers that all the time. I'm like, go.
And they're like, I don't have to spend $30,000 on my roof. We'll just put that as part of
well, they
the
don't have
contract.
to. That doesn't mean they're going to sell it, right?
Yeah, it'll make the process of selling it harder.
It changes the value of the property, right?
Yeah.
I mean, unless you never know, it might be that buyer who's like, I have to have this home and it doesn't matter the price because it's right next to my mom and it's a single story and that's it. I'm buying it, right? Like it doesn't even matter, right? Okay, well, that's rare. And the buyer pool right now is increasing. But still, it's not as much as we'd like to see. We'd like to have more buyers out there. But qualifying for $1 million purchase in San Diego is,
Oh, my goodness.
it takes some good money, good job. And so buyers are picky. And while the seller doesn't have to make any of the repairs, they're going to lose a bigger part of their buyer pool if they don't. Because buyers really are, more often than not, they've saved up a significant amount of time to put 20% down or 3.5% down. Even if you're VA and you don't have to put any money down, you still have money in your back pocket because there's going to be repair work or something that you're cosmetic that you want to do. So it's still a substantial amount of money, and a lot of buyers don't have any extra money in those pockets. And so a seller can either, put a really nice turnkey product on the market that everybody wants to buy, or they can deal with a lot of lowball offers and just, looky-loos that probably won't perform.
Yeah, and that makes your job harder.
Oh, it's such a good time. Well, it's fun, You get to see a little bit of both sides. So, yeah.
Well, perfect. Let's talk a little bit now about do all homes need to have a pre-listing inspection? I'm thinking new homes, fix and flips, well-maintained homes. What do you think about which types of homes? Do all homes need to have a pre-listing?
I mean, I think it's beneficial, but no, they don't need to. No. Brand new construction, a lot of the times those builders are responsible for a certain amount of time to fix any defects on those buildings,
11
right?
months, yeah.
So that's pretty good because sometimes we do home warranties, like, oh, well, if something goes out, we bought you a home warranty. You can call them in to fix the heater or the dishwasher or whatever.
Yeah.
But moving into a brand new build house, you could go back to the builder and say, hey, I don't know, the fireplace didn't light off or, whatever it might be. So maybe in that you've already got the warranty, you've already got the builder who's on the hook to take care of stuff. So that might not be, still do a home inspection, but not a pre-inspection. And then,
what about
for
fix and
example,
flips?
okay, so I had a homeowner and they could visually see the stuff that needed to be done. So they did fix the roof. They did do the termite. They did fix some electrical. They did a lot of stuff prior. So did they need a home inspection? Maybe not as much because they had already done a lot of the pre-work that they knew was wrong with the house, but not every seller does that. But if you've already put in a substantial amount of money into fixing the material items that affect value, then, do you need to do another inspection? I think the buyer should, just to make sure that those systems do work and that the work was done correctly. But you've already paid for most of the upgrades that needed to be done. So maybe in that particular instance, you've spent your money in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, I definitely think if you're dealing with a trust sale, you should definitely get a home inspection done. And if the home is, you know, more than 50 years, just get it done because...
Everything will be out of code.
Well, probably. You know.
Health and safety items.
Health and safety items, just, you
50
know.
wood smoke detectors.
It just puts you back in the driver's seat again.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. And I see a lot of fix and flips that I go in and it's beautiful inside.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, this is great. And when I start looking at the fit and finish of things, I can tell what kind of care they've taken. And when I start to see little things missed here and there, I'm like, I can't wait to get to the attic or the crawl space.
Uh-huh.
And then you get to see who really remodeled that home. Because just last week, there must have been 5 miles of wire up in the attic. They just were so sloppy about running their wire, and it was all over the place, and it was just a mess. But inside, it was a beautiful, beautiful place. So it's, I agree with you completely there. I think not every home. I tell clients when I talk with them, not every home needs to be have a pre-listing inspection, but I think the vast majority would do well to get them.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, great. This has been some great information. It's again one of those things that I think get overlooked in our industry, and I think if people were to go and get pre-listing inspections for all the reasons we just talked about, the transactions would go much smoother and people would get more money.
And I think it's just the opportunity for a seller to have that conversation with their realtor before they begin. I mean, it's something that they can talk to them about and decide, is this going to be beneficial to me or not? And maybe they didn't realize that a home inspection really wasn't as much money as they thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't realize that they were going to get an actual report. So I think it's beneficial to everybody to at least have the conversation before they actually put their house on the MLS.
Fantastic.
Yeah, cool.
Cathy, thank you so much for coming in today. Where can people reach out to you if they're looking to buy or sell a home?
Well, I live and work in Imperial Beach. It's my little stomping ground. So you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, the web, at home in IB. Cathy Clamp, and that's pretty much it.
Fantastic. So if any of you are looking to purchase a home or sell a home in IB or anywhere in San Diego, reach out to Cathy and she can take good care of you. If you're following us on our YouTube channel, make sure to like and subscribe. And also if you're following us on your podcast, make sure that you hit the direct downloads link and you will be notified whenever we come out with a new podcast.
Nice.
Thank you for tuning in today, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Walk This House.